Okay, so here is the completed block, quilt top, whatever you want to call it. And now it's time to mark it where you want to quilt it. And there are different ways to do that. One of them is using like some kind of a stencil, which is like a plastic shape and you trace around it. This is a water-soluble pen, which is in your kit. The blue end is the marker end. The white end is the eraser end, which is basically water because it makes the marks disappear. So on the lighter areas, I'm going to mark a 1/4 inch inside the edge on the lighthouse. Oops. There we go. Moment. I'm going to get the backing piece out, which is a big piece of fabric. I'm going to lay it wrong side up on the table. Take painter's tape. Take the backing onto a flat surface. And I would highly recommend that you not do this on your dining room table because you will leave big scratches in it. So if you have like a kitchen counter that has, you know, that's not going to show scratches on it, that would be a really good thing. Okay. Now you have a nice long ruler in your kit. One thing that I forgot to do first was to figure out where the center is on all 4 sides of this piece. So I'm going to get a bigger ruler out that I have here. Hopefully it's big enough. Yes. Okay. So this particular piece of fabric is about 22.5 inches long. Half of 22 is 11. Half of a half is 1/4. So 11 1/4 is my center on this side. And on, oops, 11 1/4 on this side. Okay, and then going crosswise, it's almost 22, so we'll say 11 is about the middle here, and 11 is about the middle here. Okay, so then the easiest way to find the centers is actually to fold stuff. Okay, so I have the batting pre-cut for you, so but we still want to match up the centers. So there's crosswise, so I can lay it so that the fold is on the crosswise parts, and fold it this way. So I want to nudge it over because it's just about there. Okay, now the batting and the backing are intentionally cut larger than they need to be. Transfer these marks onto here. And then we'll take our top, which is here. Okay, so again, the easiest way to find the center is to fold it. I'm going to go squish, squish, squish up here. Squish, 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 squish down there. That'll mark the top and bottom centers. And then if I fold it again in the other direction, no measuring on this. Okay, if I had folded the backing piece first, I wouldn't have had to measure that either. Okay, so we want this to be even across here. And we want this to be even up and down. Okay, and the reason that we want to do this is because the backing again is intentionally larger than it needs to be, because we are actually going to, when we go to finish this, we're going to wrap the backing around to the front to finish the edges of it rather than adding a separate binding. Okay, so once we have the layers done, then we're going to pin the layers together You're going to go through all 3 layers when you pin. So this is why you don't want to use your dining room table, because you want to scrape the top of the table or counter or whatever you're working on with the pin. Make sure you go through all 3 layers. Okay, and this is a little bit of a challenge for some people, so it might take a little practice. But we start from the center and go to the outside, so if there's any shifting, it'll kind of work its way out here. Okay, so the next step is to baste the 3 layers together, because you don't want to leave the pins in there because you'll kill yourself and bleed all over it. So I'm going to have a big long piece of thread this time and a really long needle. Okay, so the thinking behind the length of the needles is the shorter the needle, the shorter the stitch. So as you can see, you're supposed to take big stitches with this one. Okay, I'm going to park it there for a moment. Find the end of the thread. Thread the needle. Pull it most of the way through. And this time, instead of putting a knot on the end of it, I'm just going to do like a big long thread tail. So for the first stitch, I'm starting at a corner, pulling it most of the way through, and I'm going to do a back stitch to hold it. And as I'm stitching this, I want to try to keep my stitches within about a 1/4 inch from the outside edge of the fabric of the quilt top. And I can also do several stitches at a time before I pull the thread through. So I can do 1, 2, 3 or 4, just kind of scooting forward a little bit. And then I kind of hold on to the thread tail to keep it from getting tangled. And then proceed along again. 1, 2, 3, 4 or so. I mean, you can go more. Okay, so we're going to do this all the way around the outside edge. Okay, then after that, we're going to go crossways. So you can use this as a guide if you want to. Separate piece of thread all the way across, one up and down, kind of following the center, and then a grid. I would say, excuse me, if you did like a row here and a row here, so you have a bunch of rows crosswise too. And then that'll be enough to stabilize the quilt for the hand quilting part. Okay, which we'll come back to in a couple minutes. Have it basted. I'm going to show you how to start and end your hand quilting. So again, you don't really need big long pieces of thread. And this time we're going to use a much shorter needle. And again, the theory is the shorter the needle, the shorter the stitch. Okay. Now the goal with the hand quilting is not so much to get like 20 stitches per inch, which is bizarre. It's more to have everything be consistent. Okay, so again, I'm going to do the same knot that I've been doing, but this time, and this is why they call it the quilter's knot, is because you can control how big the knot is. So I'm only going to wrap it around 2 times just to make a very tiny knot. Okay, so I don't know if you can see it or not. Put it in front of my dark shirt thing so you can see. Okay, so when you're ready to start, and I don't use a quilting hoop. What I do is I kind of roll things up, and when I'm ready to start, I try not to start at a corner, but I also start about 1 inch away from where I want to begin. Okay, so I'm going to go through the top layer and the middle layer, but not the back layer, and come up on my line. Okay, and here's the knot outside. So what we're going to do is we're going to give it a gentle tug, sometimes not so gentle, to pop it through. Okay, so now the knot is in between the layers and there's no stitching showing on the back. Okay, so then this is where a thimble is also going to come in handy. And what I do, I wear my thimble on my dominant hand, on the middle finger of my dominant hand, because that's the finger I'm going to use to push the needle through. Okay, so again, this is a running stitch, which is just up and down, which is what you've been doing all along with your piecing. Okay, so I'm going to go straight down, Okay, the point of the needle needs to go all the way through. So here's the point of the needle. This finger on my other hand is kind of what I call my catcher's mitt. So as soon as I feel the needle come through, I say, okay, it's through. Tip the needle over, and then I kind of bend the fabric as well to try to get as small a stitch as I can. And then you can do 2 or 3 stitches. Okay, so the length of the needle that's showing is the length of your next stitch. So then it goes straight down. Catcher's mitt says, yep, it's through. So I'm pushing with my thimble, because otherwise you'll have a hole in your finger in no time. And then pull your needle through. Okay, so then we kind of determine the length of the next stitch. Catcher's mitt says, yes, it's through. And back and forth. And we continue doing that. Okay, now when you get to the end of your thread and or the end of your stitching, okay, what you're going to do is come up at your last stitch, dive the needle through the big loop just like we've been doing, but I'm holding the thread about 1 inch away from the quilt top so that I can control where the knot's going to be. I want the knot to be about 1 inch away from the quilt top. Okay, then I kind of pull the thread back a little bit so I can see the hole where the thread is coming out, because I want the needle to go right back through that same hole. I'm going to travel about 1 inch away through the middle layers and not the back, and pop that knot through. Okay, and then kind of pull on the thread tail, snip the thread tail, and there's nothing, no knots on the front or the back. This is where I hand stitched a few stitches, and that's pretty much it. It's just, you know, the starting and stopping is all you really need to know.